Welcome to Every Dollar Counts with Josh and Jay, a shot of truth serum for your investment and insurance questions. I'm Josh Knoll, the owner of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jay Stubbs, Director of the Gulf Coast for First Protective. We are brought to you on the Gulf Coast Financial Advisors Podcast Network. Jay, how you doing, man?
Josh, I'm doing great. It's good to be with you back in studio, enjoying this the springtime weather we've got, and it's just a pleasure to see you. You know, you're looking a little tan. You been on the boat?
Yes, I have.
All right.
Yeah, I got a little fried this past Saturday. So
they call sunscreen, and that'll prevent you from having to get any dermatological surgeries in about 15, 20 years.
Well, I'm pretty good at the first application. I lack on the second and third, which
probably has something to do with consumption.
Yeah, no, not necessarily. So, all right. So, Jay, we are joined today by a very special guest. His name is James Pollard, and he is the host of the Financial Advisor Marketing Podcast. He's also the founder of the advisorcoach.com. James going to come in here and he's going to discuss his 5 biggest money tips and how that has helped thousands of financial advisors across the United States. That's who James works with. Before we dive into that and introduce the audience to James, let's have our friends from Sloth Racer kick us off. All right. Quick housekeeping for compliance. Jay Stubbs and First Protective are not affiliated with Prime Capital Investment Advisors, Qualified Plan Advisors, or Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, and Josh Knoll is not affiliated with First Protective. With that out of the way, let's welcome James Pollard. James, how you doing?
I am doing wonderful. I might have to come down to Alabama in a couple of weeks. I have actually never, well, that's not true. We've been through Alabama, but I've never stopped in Alabama. So it's just now on my list of things to do.
Oh, you got to come.
It is wonderful to be here. You're doing a great thing for people listening.
Well, you have a pretty large audience, so to give them kind of a reference geography point, we're recording in downtown Mobile, Alabama, which is on the western side of Mobile Bay, which is just a little bit north of the Gulf of Mexico. And then on the other side, what they call the Eastern Shore, Baldwin County, if you go on down south to the Gulf of Mexico, you hit the beautiful beaches of Orange Beach and Gulf Shores. So, yes, highly recommend you come down. It's a beautiful time of the year to come down. Beautiful beaches. It used to be kind of, it's a little secret, Jay, growing up, right?
But not anymore.
Not anymore. Now the secret is out, I'm afraid. So, well, James, what I want to do first for our audience is give you a couple minutes to describe yourself to our Every Dollar Counts audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am, as you said, the founder of the advisorcoach.com. It started off as a coaching service. That's the Advisor Coach for financial advisors. And I would essentially help them with business building, with marketing. That is my expertise. The business has evolved over the years to become more of a media company, for lack of a better term. That's essentially what it is, because we have the blog, we have the podcast, we run ads. There is a little bit of a consultancy flavor to it, but at this point, a lot of the financial advisors want to deal with me directly, and I can't always fulfill on that. So the media side of the business is pretty strong. I think the topic that we're going to talk about, the money mistakes, it's one of the best topics you could ever have me discuss, because I have seen the best of the best with financial advisors. I've seen the worst of the worst. I've seen unscrupulous actors. I've seen people who are amazing, people with the best of intentions, a whole bunch of money rules and rules of thumb. And to be able to have access to that, I'm extremely blessed. I'm grateful for it. But throughout the years, I have picked apart what I believe is the most important, and I've distilled it down to what I think is 5 of the most important things. So if you can imagine Niagara Falls going through a water filter, and then going through another water filter, then going through another one and another one, you've got this show today. So it's going to help a lot of people.
James, let me point something out. A lot of the Every Dollar Counts listeners might be small business owners. And yeah, we are talking about it from the perspective of financial advisor's business model. And he or she may be listening to this saying, well, I'm not a financial advisor. How does this apply? I want to tell all of those listeners, put this to practice in your own business model, whether you are a sole proprietor, business owner, or even kind of maybe running a territory or in sales as a W-2 employee. Listen to the things that James is going to give you today, and I bet you'll be able to plug in some of his ideas into your own business and generate some activity and maybe even some revenue.
Yeah, perfect. And James, yeah, it fits perfect for the point of our show. When we first started the show, we kind of had like a 1-page, what's the reason we're going to get in front of a microphone and run our yaps for multiple episodes. And one of those was we wanted to take financial topics and products and services and pick them apart and help people kind of understand the different pieces and then help them put it back together so they can understand it. Because Jay and I both agree with you that, there are unscrupulous actors in our industry, and one of the things we try to do is kind of shed light on a lot of this stuff, be as transparent as we can. Doesn't mean we're perfect, doesn't mean that we've got just the perfect system or anything like that. It just means that we feel like we approach it from an open and honest standpoint. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and dive into these topics. I'm going to tee you up. And so the first thing on the agenda was, so this is the 5 biggest money tips for helping financial advisors, which listeners will eventually help financial advisor clients. This is really geared towards you. First up, Jason's wealth is what you can't see. James, excuse me. Wealth is what you can't see. Let's talk about that.
So these are the biggest tips that I've learned from financial advisors. They're really applicable to everyone. Wealth being what you don't see. I was rereading Warren Buffett's annual letters to shareholders. And for the financial advisors who are listening are probably going to geek out on this. So there was a section where Buffett said that he only spent, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was like $310,000 on office equipment over decades. So he was very frugal when it came to running his own business. It's not even business that he invests in. This is his actual business. So $310,000 in office equipment and supplies and over decades. That's incredible. I know people who don't make even a fraction of 1% of what he makes, and they're spending millions of dollars on their business, the fanciest computer they can buy, the fanciest equipment, the latte machine in the office. It's nuts. And people will say, oh, well, I can buy the Ford F-150 and deduct it as a business expense, the whole thing in the first year. But do you need the truck? Or are you just trying to have a display of wealth? And I have a stat here for you. The median annual income of a luxury car owner in the United States is only $99,364. That is mind-blowing to me when you consider that these people are likely to make, let's just say, we'll cap it off at an even $100,000, and they're driving around on average in a car that is the same amount, 100% of their yearly income.
Yep.
That's crazy. They're trying to project a certain image to people that they just don't have. But what you don't see for someone like Buffett, for someone like, I don't want to say me, but me essentially, you don't see the brokerage statements. You don't see my SEP IRA. You don't see investments in trust. You don't see those things. So wealth is what you do not see.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Or Sam Walton would be a good example on that. He drove that Ford truck for how many years?
Well, and then reminds me of the book A Millionaire Next Door, where you have a lot of folks who have substantial amount of wealth built up in their qualified plans. They've contributed to their 401k. But to look at him or her or as a couple or as a household, you'd say, well, that's not my ideal client.
Right.
Well, come to find out, if you simply engage them, you find out, yeah, they are.
Yes.
They need help. They need retirement planning. And how do we get in front of that client? But you're exactly right. That's some great intel with, wealth is what you don't see.
And James, I'll go a little step further. Now, I don't have the study in front of me, but this might be fun to look up later. I've mentioned this to Jay before, but somebody did a study one time on the average income of a Suburban buyer versus a Yukon XL versus a Denali. And they found that the higher the trim package and the price point of basically same vehicle with different features on it, the higher the trim level, the lower the average income of the buyer, which I just found fascinating. So in general, a suburban SUV will have an average higher income than the Denali buyer. So that kind of coincides with what you're saying on that. All right, very good. I love that. Yeah, I mean, and personally, just to be open and honest, James, Jay and I both have been in this business for many, many years. I would say if you pressed me to give you a synopsis of my average client pulling up, 99% of them are not going to be pulling up in anything fancy. Now, my most successful clients, they could, and I do have successful clients that like to drive nice cars. It's not necessarily a disqualifier, but a lot of times they will have something that is well below their means, and a lot of times they'll have something that's paid off. So what were you going to say, Jay?
I was just going to say that I love this, but I'm looking at the number 2 and I'm thinking, man, that's going to be a good one too. So James, it says here, number 2, saving money is sexy, but making money is the workhorse. You'll never save more money than me. If I save 20% of my income, you can save 100% of your income. Expand upon that. And saving money is sexy, but making money is the workhorse.
Well, this is probably the most controversial thing on the list, but money comes down to math, and math doesn't have emotion. It doesn't have feelings. They're just numbers. You run it through your business, you run it through your life. It is what it is. Personal finance articles, they love telling people how to cut expenses, to whittle down the things like their lattes,
Right.
brown bag their lunch every single day. And while that can help, it can only take you so far. It's not that I don't think that cutting expenses that can't be helpful, because it certainly can. It's just that if someone has a $50,000 per year income, for instance, and they save 100% of their income, which is the max, this is mathematics, you cannot save more than 100% of your income. And then you have an individual who makes $300,000 per year and saves 30%. Well, I would rather be the person saving 30%, because later you can always cut expenses later. If you're retiring and you have your nest egg and you have, let's say, income from dividend stocks, for example, and you know how much that's going to be, you can always cut your expenses down to that point. But you need to get the money from somewhere, and you need to accumulate your nest egg. You need to, if you're a business owner, you need to have that liquidity event. The money has to come from somewhere. If you have a small income, you could save 100% and it just won't get you there if your goal is bigger than what the math will allow you to. I hope that makes sense. Sometimes people don't get that at first glance.
It makes perfect sense. And it just goes home to you need to strive to improve your position, either as a business owner or as an employee, always climbing the proverbial ladder of success. And hopefully that results in generating more income to the household, which helps you support your family. Helps you attain your goals, your overall financial goals in your life and your personal goals, and maybe even your professional goals. But saving does need to be a component of that. And in order to save some of the dollars that you've worked hard for and maybe even protect those dollars, we've always got to be looking for incremental increases in the money we bring home.
Well, and I'll even go down one little rabbit hole, if you'll allow me, James, in that I feel like over this past year, with when COVID hit and the significant amount of stimulus and money that has been put out there, there has been a lack of focus on improving one's income stream. And what I mean by that is you've seen people that have accumulated, quote unquote, wealth on paper. They've seen they've seen their investments go up, and it makes them feel good. But what they've done sometimes is they've actually lost a little bit of life momentum in whatever career choice or expertise choice that they made, where they could have built up and really gotten some momentum going to have a higher income over a long period of time. Because, I don't know how you feel about it, but these times will not last forever. These things tend to equal out. But the one thing that you can build that is going to produce a steady revenue over 10, 20, 30 years is if you'll concentrate on developing an expertise that has value, that produces an income, that has the ability to increase, then you will always have that spigot to tap, versus just sitting there and saying, well, I'm just going to hold steady in whatever I'm doing. That amount of income's fine because I'm making money in this other spot. Don't neglect your workhorse, I think is how I'd put it. You agree with that?
Totally. And your income puts you in a position to win. If you have a higher income and there's a market downturn, yes, you should be investing on a regular basis consistently. You don't want to try to time the market, because studies prove that that's
good luck on
really
that one.
A good strategy for you to follow. But not that I'm giving you financial advice. You just read the books for yourself. But if I have a high income and I have the ability to increase that income, when a downturn happens, or if I'm interested in real estate and a downturn happens and I want to buy some properties, I have to have the income for it. And to create that income, it's an incredible skill. And I don't want to come off as the person who's saying not to save. Absolutely not. Of course, you have to save. Again, money equals math. You have to save something in order to have something. I think one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten from several different financial advisors, but maybe the people listening haven't heard this, is that whenever you get an increase in your income, save half of that and adjust your lifestyle with the other half. I think that's a good piece of advice, because if you get a $10,000 raise at work, you can enjoy $5,000. You can have an increase in your lifestyle. You can have the things that you wouldn't have otherwise had. You can reward yourself. Yes, there are psychological benefits to that, but you can also save the other 50%, that other $5,000, and you will be better off than you would have been otherwise if you just spent all of it.
Yep, totally agree. All right, so number 3 is something, I'm going to read it like you said it, but before I say that, in our line of work, we call it under-promising and over-delivering. Conservative estimates can save your butt. Is that kind of what you meant on that? Tell us a little bit about that line.
A little bit. So this is especially applicable to business. I would not operate as a business today, the advisor coach, some of the other things that I have my toes dipped into, they wouldn't exist if we weren't conservative. If we had wild, optimistic estimates and we thought we were going to make tons of money in the first year, or that the investments that we made were going to have high percentage yields, we would have been wrong. So by being conservative and expecting the best but planning for the worst is kind of how I would put it. We stayed in business and we did well. I have a survey here that I'd like to share. So according to the 2018 Life is Good Optimism and Positivity Survey, 85% of Americans consider themselves to be optimists. But financial planning and optimism, it's a dangerous combination sometimes, because let's say that you want to be optimistic and you plan that your investments are going to yield 9% per year on average, all the way up to your retirement. A lot of good financial advisors will tell you, wait, hold up, pump the brakes a little bit. Let's plan for just 5%, for just 6%. Let's keep this down, because if you meet that goal, awesome. We're going to push you to hit that. We're going to push your financial plan to accommodate that. But anything more than that is just going to be gravy, if you will. That's the way that you want to do it. When hiring team members, for example, within the business, to give another specific business example, I will budget more than is necessary. When I look at their salary and I try to plan out for 3 to 6 months of their salary, I put another couple months on that, because I want to know that we can survive a bad hire. I know that's a really specific example for business, but that's how I approach it. I want to be conservative in every aspect of life when it comes to money.
So as Josh stated earlier, it does sound a lot like under promise and over deliver.
Right.
Yeah.
Or don't be like those guys that come into my office every couple of months with a spreadsheet that shows, 15% return year after year after year. And if I'll just invest in their business, I don't know if you get hit up with those, James, or not, but everybody will come in and they'll say, yeah, we got this idea and here's our projections. We're going to make, 15% this year, 20 next. And like, where do these numbers come from? Is this, this looks like a hope and a prayer more often than not.
Well, conservative estimates are always good, and I echo that, James. This next one on your list, number 4, it says dogma is dangerous. Explain that one for us.
Oh, hold on, Jay. I love this one. Avoid those that preach only one way to succeed with money. Oh, my Lord. James, if we had one shining pillar of this podcast, it's that there is no golden ticket. There is no one financial instrument that will provide your financial salvation. I mean, it's one of the things that we just hammer home to avoid those guys. I hate to pick on those guys, but I'm really curious to see what you got to say about this.
Every so often, because I work with thousands of financial advisors, every so often they'll get into like a conference or a Zoom call or something with me in about 2 weeks. So yesterday I did a presentation with a group called Liberty in South Africa. There's a couple thousand financial advisors there. And part of the agreement is that in 2 or 3 weeks, I go back and I have a private conversation with them and they're going to ask me questions. Whenever I do something like that, every so often there's an advisor who would just say, well, what do you do? And I'll say something, and like a specific example would be, I mentioned to someone that I have a SEP IRA, and the financial advisor nearly had a heart attack. He's like, why don't you have a Roth or do a Roth conversion, whatever? Who says I don't have Roth assets as well?
Right.
And like, it should be all Roth all the time. It's like, well, no, because what if I am at a huge tax or a high tax bracket today, and I know that next year my income is going to be significantly less, or my household income is going to be less. What if I'm planning for that? You don't know that. You don't know that situation. I've had some financial planners who will bash people who provide insurance. I've heard from insurance providers and agents who will bash financial planners. It's just so weird. Everyone is in this belief that their one way is the right way to do things. There are people on YouTube who talk about real estate who say, oh, you don't need the stock market, just invest in real estate.
Right.
I could never accept that message. Mark Twain once said that to the man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yep.
I think that's what's going on here, but you have to be very, very careful, especially if you're someone who's listening to the show and you're thinking about hiring a financial advisor or working with you guys. That's a good test to put people through. If you're shopping around for a financial advisor and that financial advisor says there's only one way, or tries to view you as a nail and they're the hammer, you got to run, because that's not a good situation.
Amen. Thank you very much. There's lots of ways to accumulate wealth. There's lots of different tax efficient and tax-free vehicles out there. But some people might not need the tax-free and tax-efficient. They're looking for something a little bit more robust. So what you have to do is sit down, profile yourself, profile your goals, your objectives, and see what all the tools in the toolbox of financial planning world, what's going to fit in your specific piece of your puzzle on the table.
Well, and James, just to be open and honest, Jay, in our pretty expansive network down through here in our life experience, a lot of times you'll run into quote unquote advisors that have kind of one lane like that, and a lot of times it's just simply they don't want to take the time to learn the other aspects of financial advising. They've got in, they've been a one-trick pony and it's done well. And instead of, having a little bit open mind that one size does not fit all, they just try to shoehorn everybody into that particular thing because it makes them the most money, just to be honest with you, right? I mean, sometimes doing the right thing for a client is the least profitable for you. And that's just how it is. And you just have to go down whatever that path is. And sometimes those things work out, those instruments and those products come into play. And sometimes that's just not the answer. But yeah, Jay and I fight that battle too. In fact, we have several chuckles over some of our peers here.
And let me be clear: we're not saying that being a specialist in a particular product market or opportunity or planning, being a specialist isn't wrong. As long as you understand that you have to build centers of influence with other people and say, hey, I don't handle that. You need to go see this group or this firm or that person. With respect to that, and you embrace there are other things that need to be accomplished. But if your specific specialty is to handle risk management and you only do life insurance and disability income protection planning, you have to understand that there's a lot more to it, and you should have good people that you can send your clients to for financial planning, property and casualty, estate planning, tax preparation, all of that.
Yeah, the guys I'm referring to, Jay, usually the ones that tell you that they're the only ones that know the right way and everyone else is really stupid. Those are the ones I'm picking on, right? All right, so James.
Speaking as a business owner, I like looking at people and considering people who, if they have a dogma that they preach and they really like and they can't get away from, I will consider their methods, but I will look at other people and they won't talk to each other. So if I'm talking to somebody who has a specific dogma and is really good at that, I will hire him or her and I'll look at that person, but I'll get someone who can play devil's advocate. And I'll say, let's just say that someone came up to me and said XYZ. What would you say to that person? And they'll be like, oh, well, you don't want to do that because of this. And they'll give me all these different reasons. And I can use that to go back and talk with the different people. So in that sense, I'm kind of like the puppeteer here. But for someone who is looking to hire a financial advisor, and that is going to be the only person you interface with, you got to be really careful because you don't have that position like a business owner would have. And even with like employees, if I have someone who thinks SEO is the only marketing strategy I should dump money into, I want to make sure I have a paid ad specialist on staff as well to tell me every reason why I shouldn't be investing in SEO. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Very good. All right, James, last on the list, personal finance is truly personal. What do you mean by that? I mean, I agree with the statement as it sits, but what's your thoughts on that?
So we haven't talked much about marketing, so I will bring this. This is the tip that I think marketing can help with. So I come from a world in the financial services marketing space where clickbait titles exist. And these titles will say something like 10 reasons why you should never buy a home. Reason number 4 will shock you. Those titles exist because they get clicks, they get engagement, they put eyeballs on advertisements. That's just the world that I come from. But the best personal finance articles, the titles really should be something like, should you buy your home or should you rent? We have no idea because personal finance is personal to you. The best financial advisors will examine your situation. They will craft a plan that's right for you. And I consider this to be, I don't want to say my most important money tip, but it's up there. It's closely related to avoiding dogma, but it's unique enough to warrant its own tips. You have to examine your habits, your spending habits, your savings habits, your investing habits. You may be surprised at what you find. And I promise that if you're a listener listening to this and you examine your habits, they're going to be different from the person next to you. They're going to be different from your colleague, from your boss, from your family member. But until you craft a plan that is unique to you, you're going to fight an uphill battle because the savings habits that are right for me may not be right for everyone else. The investments that are right for me as a younger individual Someone with a little bit more money may not be the right thing for someone who is older, nearing retirement with not as much money, that kind of thing. So personal finance really is personal. There's no other way to put it.
Well, I've been serving in this industry for 22 years, and oftentimes I find that people have that belief, and when they do treat it as a personal and they don't flaunt it, they want to kind of keep their cards close to their vest, so to speak. But they also have to understand that they've got to open up sometimes to an advisor so that they can accomplish their goals. Because if you don't open up, then certain things can't be accomplished. So echo your sentiments there, James, and good points there.
Very good. Well, James, I'm going to give you the final word, and then I'd like you to tell folks how they can find you or reach out to you. I know you're available on multiple platforms, but let's point some people in the right direction.
So if you are interested in learning more, the website is theadvisorcoach.com. The podcast is the Financial Advisor Marketing Podcast, and that's obviously geared more towards financial advisors. But if you've listened to this, if this has helped you, if the money advice I've given you here has been beneficial to you or has impacted you in any way, feel free to contact me. Just let me know. I enjoy getting stories like that. You can find me on LinkedIn by searching James Pollard, the Advisor Coach. I should show up. If I don't, I'm not doing a good job with my marketing. But yeah, I appreciate the people who are listening. I appreciate you guys. I think this has been a wonderful service for people.
Well, I have one more question for you. You enjoy doing the podcast? I mean, you have some fun with that?
I love doing the podcast. A lot of people think that I do the podcast as a business extension, and I do. The podcast is profitable. It does make money, but it's not a home run grand slam. If I had to make a decision today to keep the things that make the most money, podcasting would be the first thing to go for me personally. I know people have great business success with the podcast. I am not one of them. The reason I love doing the podcast is because I work with a company called The Podcast Factory, and I enjoy networking with the people behind the scenes. There are people within that group who have tens of millions of dollars in real estate. They are successful investors. They are successful business owners. They have raised capital. The ability for me to be in the same rooms with these people and have conversations with these people is worth far more to me than what I pay and do for podcast production. So I love it. I would do it for the networking alone, though.
It's kind of like us and Johnny in Deep Fried Studios down
Heck
here.
yes.
We love all of the people who come in here and network with them, and we've interacted with them for the last 2 years. It's great.
Well, yeah, you end up getting like an MBA through some of these topics that you would have had to pay somebody to do otherwise. So it works out great. Well, all right. So James Pollard, again, thank you for joining us, man. You're fantastic. Huge fan of the show. For those of y'all that are listening, he showed you how to get to him, but definitely check out James Pollard, the Financial Advisor Marketing Podcast, and then theadvisorcoach.com. Listeners, if you'd like to continue the conversation with us about any of these topics, you can call 251-327-2124, or you can set an appointment on our website, gulfcoastfa.com. To all you independent and semi-independent advisors and agents out there listening to us and hearing the value that Jay Stubbs could bring to your practice, you can find him at jstubbs.com. That's JAYSTUBBS.com. So many thanks to our producer, Johnny Gwynn, Deep Fried Studios. Thanks to my co-host, Jay Stubbs. Multiple thanks again for making the time and coming on, to our special guest, James Pollard. And finally, a huge shout out to all of you that have joined Jay and I on this journey, and to those of you that are joining us now. Do me a favor, please subscribe on the Apple Podcast app or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And while you're there, you would be doing us a huge favor if you would rate and review the show. It helps other listeners like you find us. Lastly, you like the show music? Go check out slothracerband.com. That's slothracerband.com. And they're going to take us home now. This has been Every Dollar Counts with Josh and Jay. Advisory services offered through Prime Capital Investment Advisors, LLC, PCIA, a federally registered investment advisor. PCIA, doing business as Prime Capital Wealth Management, PCWM, and Qualified Plan Advisors, QPA. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is independent of Prime Capital Advisors. Information presented is for educational purposes only, is not an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities. All investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, be sure to consult a tax professional before implementing any tax or investment strategies.